The Wolves made hard work of this game. Like Steph's out, Draymond, Clay get ejected, and for I no disrespect, but I think that if you would take Jaden McDaniels only plays 1 minute, but so do Draymond and Clay. I think that you would say that's net advantage Wolves, especially with Golden State's depth issues. But they made hard work of this game. But this is, you mentioned Brendan Podziemski, and also like Dario Saric had a nice game last night as well. And this is sort of something that kind of happens where guys who aren't really on the scouting report. Like I looked it up this morning. Dario Saric took 15 shots last night. He hasn't taken 15 shots in a game since 2021, and has done it about 10 times total since he got traded from the Sixers to start his career. So this is not on your scouting report is Dario Saric like primary offensive weapon. And these are NBA players that are all very good. So this is why you sometimes see in sort of a one-off guy missing, guy gets hurt. The team that's supposedly undermanned is like feistier than you'd expect because they have good players who are getting opportunities, and you're not really like does any player on the Timberwolves before last night know what really have an understanding of what Brendan Podziemski liked to do with the ball?
Right. No,
does anybody watching basketball have, you know what I mean?
Like, to be honest, like in my days as scouting and working in the video room, whenever there was like a late scratch, like day of or whatever, especially if it happened after shoot around, after we had our shoot around, it just created problems. Like there'd be a game, we'd be playing Portland, and like Brandon Roy would be a scratch, when we get to the arena, and then all of a sudden, like we're getting killed and we lose that game. And we're like, how do we lose this game? They didn't have Brandon Roy. It's a combination of like a letdown effect. We don't have to go as hard. And then, as you said, once Clay and Draymond go out, it's like, okay. And to the Warriors' credit, they balled. Those kids balled. Like they put up a pretty big lead. They had a nice little, a 10-point cushion at certain points and whatnot. And I think they just rolled with it. But like, so that's the kind of stuff, the weirdness that happens during the regular season that I think is somewhat inevitable with some of these games. It happens to every team is going to have something like that. But let's just focus on the Wolves and sort of the fun part.
Yeah.
They're really freaking good, guys. Like this is the thing I think people really need to understand.
So early in the season, man, one of the things I like to look at is quality wins, and the Wolves, I mean, you got to play who's in front of you, but the Wolves have had a really tough schedule. If you think about the contenders in the league, and they've beaten Denver, they've beaten Boston. They now have beaten the Warriors 2 times. They've won 7 straight. They've got the second part of a road back-to-back where they had Golden State and Phoenix. So they play Phoenix tonight to go for their 8th straight win. And I mean, on a back-to-back, who knows? This could be a schedule loss. But this team has been really good. And Anthony Edwards, who we will talk about, has been a primary focus. But I want to swing to Rudy Gobert because I think we all felt like last season there was some regression to his game. And especially on the defensive side, I felt like we saw that. And I'm now thinking it might have just been some fit issues because he's all the way back defensively. He looks great. Now, there's regression on the offensive side. I'm not going to deny that that's not there. But I think defensively, Rudy Gobert looks as good as he did 2 or 3 years ago.
So I'm glad we brought this up because I think that the Wolves are that interesting combination of especially defensively, they've been good, but also fortunate, I think. They have the best effective field goal percentage defense in the league by a huge margin. And some of that is they've protected the rim really well. You can see that. But the other part is they are by far the team that has benefited most from sort of poor opponent shooting. And this is taking into account who's shooting and what shots they're taking. Their opponents are hitting about 4.5% less on threes than you would expect given, the types of shots and the shooters. And that's a big deal. That's, that basically is it's tough to translate directly into points because you have to factor in, they obviously some of the offensive rebounds happen on some of the misses and stuff like that. That's probably 4 or 5 points a game of positive opponent shooting luck. So I think we can accept that they're good. I do want to see a stretch where opponents actually make some jumpers against them to see calibrate where they actually are in the firmament of the West this year.
Well, I kind of want to go a little bit different than Dave, and shocking again, Seth and I just a little bit on different sides of things. They have the best defense in the NBA by like 3 points, like in defensive rating. And I get what Seth's saying with that. That's to me more than just shot luck and all of that stuff. That's a combination of, and when you look at last year to this year, look, D'Angelo Russell was their starting point guard last year. Like, kind of hard, defensively.
Yeah.
This year it's Mike Conley. Jaden McDaniels has shown, hey, I'm an all defensive type of player, and he's been absolutely phenomenal. Anthony Edwards has been absolutely phenomenal on the defensive end. It's just amazing when you have actual perimeter defenders around, how much easier it makes Rudy Gobert's job. Like, that's kind of the thing. Like, over the years with the Jazz, we started to see the struggle of no perimeter defense. They were just giving up straight line drive after straight line drive after straight line drive and expecting Rudy to just erase everything. Well, now this team from the from the Wolves aren't giving that stuff up. They're doing a great job standing guys up, slowing people down, and so on. And it allows Rudy to kind of be the guy that he's supposed to be. And I just think that's just freaking amazing. Like, that's the difference to me. And I think it's not just Rudy. When we talk about the defense, we got to talk about those guys on the perimeter all doing a phenomenal job.
I think there's also a schematic element as well. It's John Krasinski talked about this a lot last year. Is there's a certain amount of you don't want to get beat, but when you get beat, like Rudy doesn't like a whole lot of traffic around his feet when he's like going to contest shots. And the Wolves, if you remember 2 years ago, they had a good defense that was based largely on them running all over the court and, having long athletic guys who could, cover ground and stuff like that. And so the mix of, Rudy wanting space to, do his thing and everyone else being used to flying around, I think almost led to, McDaniels and Root and Gobert getting in each other's way or something like that. And I think they've probably adjusted a little bit to, all right, we're going to do a good job of staying in front of guys, but when we do get beat, we're going to peel off and trust that our big guy inside has got that sort of more taken care of, as opposed to feeling like, oh, we've got to sprint all over the court and help like they did 2 years ago.
And I think one other thing that we don't talk about the Wolves enough about last season, they did not have a full training camp.
Right.
Like the way, Towns was sick the whole training camp. Rudy took a lot of time off because of EuroLeague. Edwards came in fat, talking about Popeye's chicken. Like, you had a whole lot of like stuff around this team. And then, Towns was out the whole year. I mean, there was just so many different things. And then they make a big trade at the trade deadline. Like, there's just so many different things that was around that team last year. This year, it feels like everything's settled. And even to the point where this is Anthony Edwards' team. There's no question about that.
To that point, I want to talk about Karl Anthony Towns and how I think he's fit in to this team really, really well so far this year. He had a good game against the Warriors. I mean, closing the games, they're going to go to Anthony Edwards. But when you have a player like Karl Anthony Towns that can give you the sort of offense that he's able to generate, it just seems like him and Rudy are able to coexist a little bit better. And Karl Anthony Towns actually playing a little bit of defense, guys. Maybe that fit isn't so awful. Again, it's still early. We'll see how it goes mid-season. But, there were a lot of people who were kind of hot to trade Cat. And, you may not be able to replace that sort of production and talent, though.
I still think the fit is imperfect if we're talking playoffs.
Sure.
Like, that's, but that's also for a franchise like Minnesota. That's we're veering into very good problem to have territory, and need a kind of a clean run at it to see, like, they were competitive against the Nuggets last year, but we need a clean run at it to see what it looks like in the postseason. Before we move on, I do want to clarify, like, Mo, you're right that if they're the first,
stop it, you're done.
If they're the best, if they've been the best defense by a lot, that the shooting luck aside, that still means they're a good defense. But it's the kind of thing that, like, maybe they've played like the third best defense, and then you add the positive variance, like good and lucky. generally speaking, the teams that have like the best defensive rating in the league have been both good and fortunate in terms of opponent shooting. So it's not like it doesn't mitigate or say they're not playing good defense to observe that. It's just like, especially how well they've done against these top teams. All right, they've caught some teams on nights where they haven't shot the ball well as guarded them well. And so like, let's let it play out a little bit, see what it looks like again when they're playing games where the opponents are shooting, hit 37% of their threes instead of 32.
No. Sorry. No, that's fair. I want to go to Edwards though, and the end of the game against the Boston Celtics, because that was a phenomenal performance. Like he has 5 fouls. He's, still playing solid defense. He strips Jason Tatum on a play, turns into a jump ball. They win the tip, kicks it up to Mike Conley, get a 3. He starts making a whole bunch of shots. He took over in overtime and literally won that game. Like he dueled the Boston Celtics and beat them. And I think that's the kind of stuff you're seeing from him in that growth level. And I think that's the big thing from there. So it's, to me, this team is going to only go with how far he develops and whatnot. And Cat is okay with being the sidekick, because that's really the deal. Everybody wanted to trade Cat. You're right, Dave. The only time I feel like at any point this season they should is if Cat decides, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, and that's fine for the Wolves, because you know why? Naz Reid is waiting on the bench, and he's killing it too.
Yeah, he's also. I mean, they're as small as the Warriors are. The Wolves are big as hell, and everybody can kind of play. But Anthony Edwards, the thing that has most impressed me to start the season, his decision making. There are times where other players of his caliber will force shots, and I've seen him actively not force the shot and look for the pass, look for the cutter. These are the sorts of things that, when you're thinking about a lead initiator, a ball handler, playmaker guy, that's what you want to see. Like, what's not just can he get a bucket anytime he wants, can he create buckets for other people anytime he wants? I mean, that's just as important.
You say this has been an issue with other players of similar. It's been an issue for Edwards himself. I think that right. some of the worries about the Wolves in the last couple of years is they've had a couple guys who have not handled Edwards early in his career, but also I think this was this has been a hallmark of D'Angelo Russell and Towns at times as well, is sort of the trying to play the moment instead of play basketball. And it's just like, oh, I got to make a play here. And something, some kind of bad shot or bad pass or, crazy offensive foul results. And so I think this has been, it's kind of a natural maturation process, I think. But that has been, for Edwards, that decision-making has been sort of the big question about him going back to him coming into the draft. Obviously the physical talent and the skill level is what it is. It's like, can he consistently get to the point where he's making the right decision at a high enough proportion of the time? And that's something that, again, quality reps, get playing in big games and, oh, that didn't work and we lost because I did that, and really sharpening that way has been good for him.
Yeah. Imagine if he loved basketball. I mean, that guy could be amazing.